Welcome to the TH Fantasy Football Show, hosted by Hestel and Ed.
Like a troublesome dynasty team, the New Orleans Saints are in transition, to say the least. But hopefully they will have some fancy relevance this season. And Tom, we're going to make a start at quarterback as always.
So obviously Derek Carr out of the way, right? So he's gone now. We've got a couple of options to discuss.
We do. And I'm going for Tyler Shough as being the most probable QB1. Now, full disclosure, we are recording this on the 23rd of July. So if something has been confirmed after this date, or who knows, maybe a mega trade happens, don't see it myself. But if anything changed from what we're about to say, this is why we cannot predict the future yet. If we could, we would be far better fantasy players. I mean, firstly, for a rookie, he's old. He'll be 26 in September, which is older than 4-year starter Trevor Lawrence. You're not drafting him. From a fan, let's forget about we who knows?
No chance. No.
In New Orleans, with no idea whether he's going to be good, whether he will be a disaster, whether he will be Brock Purdy-esque. We have absolutely no idea. So, from a fantasy point of view, do not draft him. However, as with all rookies, especially quarterbacks, get ready to pull the trigger on waivers if he starts to have an impact. Don't get carried away with training camp talk about how he's going to be great. Obviously, we're here to talk about redraft. From a dynasty point of view, he should be rostered in every single dynasty league. Absolutely. There is no kind of question about it. From a redraft point of view, you are not drafting him. I see him at best being a potential bye-week streamer quarterback. I don't see anything more from him this season, if I'm completely honest. Do you have any interest in drafting a Saints quarterback for redraft, Tom?
No, not particularly, unless I'm taking incredibly late punt in a super flex league. I think they're ones to avoid, really. As you say, so old, coming into the league. I know they play. It's not old, is he? But I know they play a lot longer than they used to. But you'd expect him to have shown what he can really do by his age. That's your issue, really, isn't it? There.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the exact point. But the Saints obviously see something in him, or do they? Or do the Saints actually see that their franchise quarterback is in next year's draft? That was also quite possible. I mean, there were hopes that maybe Mr. Previous projected number one pick in the NFL draft, Spencer Rattler, that was a fading star if there ever was one. We saw a bit of him last year, 5 full games. 5 full games, 7 starts. He kind of ended up not seeing out a couple of those games. He broke 15 points once for fantasy, and that was week 17. Yeah, it's Vegas. Long term, I mean, he's younger than Shough. He wasn't a disaster last year. There's a route that Spencer Rattler becomes a thing and could well see lots of game time this year as well. But you're still not drafting him. I think he will be fantasy irrelevant this year. Like I've said, if you're in Superflex best ball, yeah, you're probably going to take a gamble on him very, very late in the draft. But redraft, not interested in the slightest. I don't think the Saints are going to be incredibly relevant in the actual NFL this year, let alone from a fantasy point of view, and certainly not from a QB perspective. Am I being overly negative there, Tom, or is it fair?
I can't really argue against it, if I'm honest. Obviously, Rattler had all that hype around, and he was on that QB1 show. He was supposed to be elite players. I suppose their only potential saving grace is the incoming of Kellen Moore, head coach. Perhaps he can work a little bit of magic. But, I mean, for me, Rattler in particular just screams, career backup. I don't think he's ever going to be kind of that QB1 for you. So I would definitely avoid him. There is a little bit of mystery with Shough, at least because he's not done it in the league yet. But yeah, try to avoid the QB room if you can. There's got to be better options out there for you.
And if there is any chat during training camp, that is often coach speak. I don't think there's anything we'll actually need to take seriously until we've seen it for ourselves. But as I said, Brock Purdy came out of nowhere. Maybe Tyler Shough could do the same. A player I am interested in drafting, though, and seems to just be a relentless value for fantasy over the last couple of years, and that is Mr. Alvin Kamara. So drafted as the RB16 last year, finished off the season as RB9. He is still the number 2 pass catching target in New Orleans as well. And that is regardless of his age, what makes him so valuable still. Last season, 60 receptions for over 4. Sorry, that's my prediction for this year. I'll start again. This year, I still see him being safe for 60-ish receptions, 400 plus ish yards, 2 to 4 touchdowns. It's the touchdown rate that has absolutely plummeted for him, though, from the rushing game and not just the receiving game. So if we look back to his mega season in 2020, where he had 16 rushing touchdowns, we mention it every year. Let's mention it one more time, including that. Was it 5 touchdowns on Christmas Day in 2020?
Yeah, elite.
Since then, 2021, he had 4, 2022, 2, 2023, 5, last season, 6. The big rushing touchdown days have gone from Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill, we'll talk about later, has been stealing some of those of late. I just think that his passing work gives him such a solid floor in your PPR leagues. And obviously all of our scoring that we're looking at is based on PPR scoring, because that is our scoring method of preference. I just think that floor is so safe that getting him as your RB13, so he's currently going ADP RB15. I see him around RB30, so there or thereabouts. If he's your RB2, you can do a heck of a lot worse than Alvin Kamara, in my opinion.
Yeah, he just seems to not age, doesn't he? And I think that passing work helps that, because he's not taking quite such a pounding every week. He's able to stay healthy, isn't he? Obviously, he missed some time last season. He went out about week 15 or something like that with a groin injury, and still his stats are incredibly high. He's got to drop off at some point because age obviously becomes a factor, but perhaps we see another year of him, as you say, at that value, it's so hard to not take him up on that, really.
I think it's so reliable out the backfield. If it is Tyler Shough that takes it, well, actually, whoever is passing him the ball, we know they're not going to be an elite passing quarterback. Alvin Kamara could well be that dump-off option that we see used time and time again, which we're not bothered if that's exciting from a real-life point of view. For fantasy, that is gold for running backs, isn't it?
Yeah. Could he have a drop-in passes, perhaps, with Olave? Obviously, you'll talk about in a little while, but didn't have a great last year in terms of injuries. Shaheed obviously had issues with injuries last year. Do you think he perhaps have a little drop in terms of passing work if those two are able to stay a bit fitter?
I think no, because I think when you look at the sorts of passes that Olave's getting, I think it's because Alvin Kamara is going to be so valuable for those dump offs. We've not got elite tight end options for those shorter balls as well. I just see Kamara as being relatively safe this year, and I think, to be honest, is the only player we're going to talk about where the word safe can apply. If I'm completely honest, when you're looking behind him in the pecking order, we have the rookie Devin Neal as a round 6 draft prospect, the 17th running back taken. You can hardly be confident that he's going to have a significant role, let alone a fancy relevant one. Under transitional offense, I'm even less convinced. So he could be a late round gamble, just not a late round gamble I want to take. I think he was higher touted from what we were expecting than the NFL saw. So him drop, to be fair, to round 6. I think a lot of people saw him going maybe round 4, early round 5 at the very latest. But as with every single rookie, watch the waiver wire. If we start to see him working into a role, if we start to see him being involved, he could be worth looking at. So as a player, be interested in, maybe certainly more interested than Mr. Kondre Miller, who has burnt us time and time again. He's under his 3rd different play caller. I think the fact that Devin Neal has been drafted shows what is the future for Kondre Miller. Is playing for play callers that didn't want him. That he's not being played by the management that chose him. Only 39 rushing attempts in 2024. He's only had 80 career snaps so far in his last couple of years. Never broken off a 20-plus yard run in that time. He's also only surpassed 50 yards in one of his 13 games. The final thing I've written on Kondre Miller, and I've circled it and underlined it, and I've even stuck an exclamation mark on there for good measure. I'm out.
That's literally just out. I mean, obviously, Kamara's missed a lot of time over the last few years. One of these guys has got to step up, surely.
Well, I think you say about the time he missed last year. I think the games he missed last year with that groin strain was also when the Saints were done. Like, what was the point in Kamara going on with Carr out, with Olave out? What was the point in Kamara putting any risk? If they'd been competitive, if Carr was there, if Olave was fit and they were battling for a playoff position, Kamara would have been on the field, I reckon. You're right. Running backs missed time. I think if I had to go for it, I would gamble on Devin Neal working out a role over Miller. But I say there is a route to it. Personally, I think he'll be fancy irrelevant again. That was a recurring hamstring injury last year. I'm not one for the injury-prone tag, but hamstring injuries, as far as things that come back, that is more of a recurring injury than most. Yeah, just for me, I'm out. And until I've seen something to prove otherwise, and say 80 carries in 2 years, we've not seen anything.
But as you say, Neil could potentially be the surprise running back, I suppose. We've had such an elite running back class this year. It's not usual to see this many top running backs coming out.
Yeah.
You know, we normally get a couple of Bucky Irving last year, for example. We normally get a couple of surprises. For the love of God, don't hold me to this, but is he this year's surprise? You know, that's not a hot take. I'll make very clear.
No. Well, we don't know because he'll be a surprise, won't he? We shall see.
Yeah.
Before we move on to wide receiver and mention injuries a little more, please do subscribe, give us a like and a share as well. And once you finish watching this, please go and check out one of the other 31 deep dive shows as we profile all 32 teams through the off season. And then afterwards, if we are now the business end of August, stick around for the start of the season as well. A player that I am desperate to see a full season from is Chris Olave. So we only had 6 full games in 2024. The negatives, we've got the concussions, a number of concussions that does start to become concerning. Obviously, we know that the way the league is going with concussion protocols and taking that more seriously. Also a negative, we've said the situation around him is far from ideal. It's not what you're going to want for an elite wide receiver option. The positives, the talent. We know the talent is there. We have seen the talent. We've mentioned Kellen Moore. It's a very wide receiver friendly scheme that he will likely be putting into place. ADP of wide receiver 31 going in round 6. That is a complete fair price for the gamble that you are taking. I think it's just the fact that he's been so inconsistent in what we saw even over those 6 games. In fact, he only ended up with fewer than 10 fantasy points. We've not seen the fancy payoff from the talent consistently at all, really. I think he could be, based on volume, a real solid value pick who ends up repaying that draft capital perfectly. There is also where he does very little other than finish as a weekly flex play that sometimes works out, sometimes doesn't. It was inconsistent under Derek Carr. I mean, Derek Carr consistently tried to get him concussed with some of the passes that he put out to him. Is that going to change under Tyler Shough? Not enough for me to do anything other than pay kind of current draft cost for Olave. I'd like to shed some light on what we've got to come, but I genuinely don't know, other than the fact that I've been in on him for the last couple of years. I just want it to work out, mainly for my dynasty shares, if I'm honest, Tom.
Yeah, I've got him across a few leagues, and I have to say he's disappointed me a number of times. I mean, generally, as you say, he's been so inconsistent. Some of that could come down to concussions, but overall, he scored as a wide receiver 3, you know, when you look at it. So it does worry me a little bit. He is the clear wide receiver 1, I think, on the team. And as you say, he's got the ability to do it. Just can he stay healthy and can he put it together? I've tried to trade him away, if I'm honest, a few times and nobody's biting. You know, so, but at that, you know, round 6 cost, I've also picked him up in a couple of leagues because I just think there's such value there and he's so intriguing. But, you know, when you talk about the rookie QB situation, I always think about Neighbors at the Giants. You know, I mean, he had far from ideal quarterback play last year, but just showed what a true number 1 wide receiver can do. So, you know, jury's out on him. He's definitely worth a punt at the price, but he does worry me, I have to say.
Backing him up is Rashid Shaheed, also only made 6 games in 2024. 13.3 points per game, so higher than Olave, and he looked good at the start of the season, to be fair. I think for me, my concern is he's definitely going to have a role, but all the concerns we mentioned earlier still stand. And I don't think the Saints are going to be able to maintain one consistent fantasy relevant wide receiver, let alone two. So Rashid Shaheed for me is a weekly flex option. I don't think you could start him with confidence any given week. Don't let how solid that start to last year was fool you. That was under Derek Carr, a different style, under different play coordinators. There's a lot will have changed from that. Tyler Shough is not. Derek Carr wasn't elite. I'm not bigging up Derek Carr at any point here, but I think it's safe to say he was going to be more consistent for your fancy output for wide receivers than Shough or Rattler. Yeah, at the minute, I'm out on Rashid Shaheed. He's going round 11, though. So you're picking up on the bench. There are worse players you could pick up there. And he does have a route to that success. I think, I probably should mention at the top of the show, I think the reason I'm so concerned about a lot of these players is I think the Saints are in for a horrible, horrible season this year. And I just don't see them having any relevance across the board, let alone for fantasy. And I'm going to struggle to get excited about their offensive weapons from a fantasy point of view outside of Kamara. So Shaheed, for me, has that going against him as well.
Yeah, I'm a big Shaheed fan in that I've got quite a lot of shares at him because he's so cheap. And I've taken him in a few best ball leagues this year. I do think in best ball, he's worth a punt. And I don't think it's totally unbelievable that there is an alternate universe where he could even perhaps outrank Olave.
To be fair.
I don't think he's as talented. But if Olave comes with another concussion and then he's struggling for a few games, he's definitely the next man up, isn't he? He's definitely going to be their sort of number one target apart from Kamara, in terms of stretching the field and stuff. And he's shown he's got that big playability. Worth a punt, I think, in best ball, but I wouldn't be looking to trade for him, in Dynasty, and I certainly wouldn't be reaching for him in redraft. But if he slips anything past sort of round 11, yeah, why not take a punt on him?
And then behind him, we have Brandon Cooks returning to the Saints this year. Brandon Cooks does not deserve his own graphic. The only reason I've given Brandon Cooks his own graphic is I would like to mention Brandon Cooks one final time on a fantasy football show, because not only is he fantasy irrelevant for me this year, he is fantasy done. I don't think we will ever speak. I'd be shocked, to be honest, if he has a fantasy relevant game this year. I just wanted to mention him again, Tom, for one last time, out of respect to all of the games or the fantasy matchups he has helped us win in the past.
He's better than MVS, who he's replaced. I'll give him that. I hate MVS. So, yeah, he's definitely better than MVS. Definitely going to outscore him there. So, yeah. Please, Super Bowl winner, MVS. How did he win the Super Bowl? That's just not right.
Sad times.
Yeah.
Moving on to tight ends, I'm not going to give you a huge amount, much more optimism. I will mention the biggest fancy gremlin of them all, Taysom Hill. So he tore his ACL in December. Latest news, once again, time of recording, we are on the 23rd of July. Current news is he won't return soon, is the last quote I've managed to find. That doesn't sound good at this stage of training camp. My question is, do we see him in 2025? Potentially, do we see him again? Because he is getting on in years. I'm sure the Saints would love to find a way of getting out their way of that mega contract that he secured himself as well. The most reliable best ball gamble we have seen over the last few years. People take him late year in, year out. He pulls out a couple of mega weeks for you from best ball perspective. Yeah, don't draft him. Keep an eye on potentially, if we hear he could be back in the season, he could be worth a last round pick in best ball. I don't think we talk about Taysom Hill, though, this year by the looks of it.
No, I mean, he's got quite a big cap hit, hasn't he? Around 70 million, I think, if they try and cut him. So whether they'll cut him or not, I don't know. But they will potentially look to get rid, because, as you say, a serious injury, and he's not a young man anymore, is he? So I certainly won't be, even in sort of Titan premium leagues, I'll be avoiding Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill, really. Hill, if he's on the waiver wire and he comes back, I might look to sort of grab him at that point, but not players I'm particularly. I know Hill has been the cheat code throughout, but I just can't bring myself to draft him, if I'm honest.
No, I completely agree. Javon Johnson, though, is the tight end I'm not going to draft. I'm most interested in, I think. And the reason for that is that 3-year, $30 million deal that he's just signed. There is clearly a role for him. And that money, he will see a lot of the field you would expect. We always say a rookie quarterback's best friend is his tight end. It's also the best friend of a not very good quarterback. So that could count for Spencer Rattler as well. He could be the weekly streamer that we'd like in tight end friendly matchups. I do see a route to Javon Johnson having some useful weeks. I'm not drafting him. I don't think I'd even want him sat on a bench, to be honest. But if he works his way into a role, we could be talking to him as a bit of a canny tight end pickup weeks in those friendly weeks, especially when we get to the bye weeks. Maybe. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying go and draft him. I'm not saying he's going to have a great season. I am just interested to see what role is in line for him and whether he could find his way to having some useful weeks.
I think really you've got to skip back to, the earlier player talked about in Kamara. And for me, I think Kamara's going to take that role. If I've got to dump the ball off, I'm definitely throwing it to Kamara over Johnson. As you say, though, a big contract, so the team must see something in him. They must quite like him. They obviously predict something for him. But, it's a little bit worrying all round if you're a Saints fan, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to finish us off, the Saints season whole, I'd put them in the mix for a top 5 pick in the draft next year. They could be in the mix for number 1 overall, potentially, if Shough and Rattler really are terrible. And I think also the fact that you're in a division with 3 teams that I'm far more interested in. Buccaneers have shown what they're made of over the last couple of years. Panthers, I'm tipping Bryce Young to have a better season this year and the Panthers to start to look good. Falcons, we know how dangerous they can be as well. I just think they're clear. For me, they're clearly going to finish dead last in the NFC South, and they could potentially lose all 6 of those in-division matchups as well. Yeah, I don't think we talk about many Saints players other than Kamara from a fantasy point of view through this season. Maybe Javon Johnson, if he proves to be a bit of value. What do you think for the Saints this year?
Worrying. In what's probably, talking to the teams, probably one of the weakest divisions, isn't it? So I think in terms of football, they perhaps, could do okay. You'd expect the Bucs to do pretty well, but the other 2 are all right. Bryce Young very much up in the air there. I know they've tried to sort of build around him a little bit. So football-wise, I think the Saints could maybe do all right, but I'm not really filled with hope, to be honest. Like you, I expect them to be in that mix for a first, certainly a high first round pick next year when we come to the draft, potentially even one. If those quarterbacks are awful, they'll just get rid, won't they? There's no investment really there in either of them. They will just ship them out and they perhaps might even look to tank a little bit when we come to it.
Well, there we go. Finish on a little bit of negativity for the New Orleans Saints, but we do have the rest of the NFC South to come where we have far more fancy relevance to discuss for you. As said, please go and check out any one of the other 31 teams for our deep dive series and stick around for what we have for you in season as well. But as always, for now, that is all from me. It's all from Tom, and it's time for Malcolm to take us home.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.